7 o'clock, call this police and fire meeting to order. Before we get started, does anybody have anything they want to bring up? I got a list of 1, 2, 3, 4 items.
I'm all ears, Dan. Go ahead.
Okay, so recently I've been in a lot of these houses. Unbelievable. Some of the things I've seen. So in order to help code enforcement, we don't have anything on the books. So I'd like to entertain the thought of the International Property Maintenance Code, otherwise known as the IPMC. Basically, it brings up the basic living standards. It covers health, electric, all that stuff. So establish minimum maintenance standards, basic equipment, light, ventilation, heating, sanitation, and fire safety. Which, I tell you, a lot of these houses were just.
How are you?
So.
How long is the code? Can you send us a link to it?
Actually, I can get Becky to send you that. She just sent me the name of it and the basic things. So.
What are we under now? Are we under this Ohio Revised Code?
I think so. I don't even know if we have that.
We haven't adopted. The only thing we have is our local code. So this would be the first step towards standardization, and could lead to more standardization down the road. But at least in the cities I've lived in around the world, you have to get a permit. So for example, if you want to upgrade your electrical service, you have to have a certified electrician sign off on it before it can be turned back on, and you have to turn that permit back into the city. We are nowhere near that. This does not do that. This is just the basic level of stuff.
Basic health issues, and
you can't have a basement full of bedrooms with no egress windows, for example.
Right.
That kind of thing is what's in this.
Well, some of that though would fall under state code though, wouldn't it? That wouldn't.
Well,
because you have to have an egress if it's.
When it comes to residential, it's on us. My understanding. Now, if it's commercial, that's completely different, and where state has full jurisdiction.
That is state, yeah. So that is commercial is state. Our current code doesn't cover any of these things, and it's just the basic standards of living. It's horrendous. What I've seen is.
What have you seen, Dan?
I've seen cockroaches. I've seen running across everything. Unsanitary living. It just
sewer line houses,
defecations, everything.
And these rental properties you were in?
These are rental properties, yeah. So people need to live better than that. I mean, they deserve to live better than that. It's horrendous. Okay. And they pay big dollars for some of these things.
So the good thing about this code is it's straight off the shelf. It's pretty universal across the board. It's really thin. We're not talking, a whole fire code like Harry has already, or, right. Multiple Ohio revised codes. It's very basic in its sense. And again, it's a good platform to build upon to give us some sort of level. I mean, when I built my barn/house, not one single inspection was done. And it would just avoid, again, this book's not going to take a step full on level, but it would make sure that I don't have bedrooms without windows. So, that sort of basic safety type materials.
Sure.
Or guides.
Well, so, we don't have a building department, so we can't really enforce building codes. I always thought Athens County should have a building department, but that's up to Athens to do. But this here is it basically, if people are living in filth and squalor, I mean, there's a place out there, this will help them. It's going to make some of these landlords step up and really take a look at what they're renting.
Okay. Sounds good.
If there's no objection, I would love for Becky to present this and actually read it at the next council meeting if that's feasible.
I have no problem with it.
Yeah, I mean, we can.
We'll slate off an hour and a half for it.
38 minutes. So she can give you the gist of it.
No slideshow, please.
All right.
Thank you for that. That'll be a good tool for us moving forward.
I think so. It's a good building. Carl, you have any questions about that?
Dan bringing everybody in.
Any-
Oh, by the way, Mr. Fitch, we do start at 7 o'clock on those. 7:04 is not acceptable. Thank you.
You have to do his calisthenics over there too, did you notice that?
When he's chair of this committee, and he can say something to you. Right now, he's just down here. I'm up here.
He's the man. I just had to say it.
I deserve it.
Oh.
Okay, so that was all I had for code. And then for,
Please keep dressed the part.
Look at this.
Pretty man right there.
so, you know you're on TV. You just call him a pretty man. Television. All right, so we're gonna move on to the police department now. Chief has had a great idea about cashing in one of his part-time officer positions to a part-time clerk, which would actually save the city money because the clerk would be less expensive than a part-time officer. And it seems he's filling the positions or his schedules without these two part-time officers. So, and I'll let Chief explain the rest of it to you.
One of the things I've noticed that we are lacking in at the police department is efficiency with officers doing paperwork. And not just reports, but things like making copies of files for prosecutors, for public records requests. When they get done completing their case files, they still have to copy them and put them up and then file them away. We have to do almost daily expungement requests from the municipal court. We have to do, we get constantly every day almost, we get Department of Defense and governmental backgrounds requested where anybody's lived or went to school anywhere in Nelsonville. We also have multiple other areas where paperwork's constantly being, burdensome to the officers. I've personally been trying to take most of that load on to where officers don't have to do that because I'm encouraging them to be highly visible, to be proactive. This is one more step that we can take to enable free up officers to where they can go and do police work. I think a clerk at a lower rate of pay would be more, she would definitely have more than enough time or more enough work to do. There's definitely work there. Also, one of the benefits would be we would have a face there at the police department for walk-ins when they came in. That would also be another benefit to us. But there's definitely a clerical need there, and we've just never had that. And what ends up happening is it just creates a lot more time for officers to be in the office as opposed to outside the office doing patrol work, which is what I'm trying to streamline, is to be able to get the guys out there to do their jobs more effectively.
So quick question. So if this individual is a clerk within the police department, does this individual pay into the police and fire pension?
Well, it's a part-time position, so
it would be part-time.
Yeah.
So
be a part-time position, so no.
okay.
They pay into OPERS.
Yeah, they would pay into OPERS, which is,
which a part-time officer would be paying into OPERS anyway.
Right,
Okay.
exactly. This would be at a lower rate of pay. Of course, I would require them to have a background just like, anybody else that goes through the city employees does, because they'd be working with sensitive material and things that, as well. So a good trustworthy person would definitely streamline our process and make us more efficient.
And you're able to cover your shifts without, you right now have two open part-time positions, am I correct?
Correct.
So then you can fill your position or your schedule.
Yes, I'll be able to fill it. I mean, basically, there's another issue where some of the guys are wanting to potentially go to 12-hour shifts. There's been many studies on 8 versus 12-hour shifts. There's pros and cons both ways to it. I think the pros definitely outweigh the negatives. But one of the things is it will help reduce overtime. There's some for unforeseen areas to where law enforcement's always going to have overtime if they have a call at the end of the shift, or they get called in for court, certain things like that beyond our control. And I understand that. I think everyone here understands that as well. But as far as scheduling overtime, there will be no need for that at that point without this part-time position. I still have a vacant part-time position that would probably be asked to, work some hours as well to fill in during vacation time. So essentially the two part-time officers I would have would basically fill in part-time on when people takes vacations or extra days off or something like that. But I would have the 8 officers that would be able to cover the shifts as it is without any scheduled overtime.
Right now you got 9. Am I correct? Or you will have 9?
Uh,
Back up to 9.
Yes,
Is what you're,
count 9 counting myself, yes.
well, but I think you have 9 as far as your staffing ordinance goes.
So the staffing is 9 full-time, one of those being the chief, and then 3 part-time.
So, and I even thought of this, if you do go to your 12-hour shift, eventually here, first of the year, even if you cut 60% of your overtime out, you could afford a 10th officer to help with your scheduling, full-time officer.
And ultimately, that's what I would like to do. I would like to add an additional officer. There's some areas that we're not utilizing that I think we can definitely fill. There's some other possibilities. I spoke with some of you about it. Having a full-time investigator would be very much needed, or possibly putting somebody on the task force full-time dedicated to narcotics enforcement. There's options out there without a doubt that we could utilize somebody and really, I think, benefit from that extra position. But yeah, without this time, because this year we've went certainly, I've made every attempt to decrease the overtime, but we're, pretty well over budget as far as the overtime. We've used up more of a percentage than what we should have this year. But the new schedule's coming out, people's getting minimal overtime. So I think we can pretty much, with guys getting trained and being ready to get cut loose on their own, we should be able to rest the year without scheduling any overtime, minus any unforeseen issues.
Well, and that's why I wanted to get that conversation started now, because first of the year, I'd like to see that 10th officer, so we can move our police department forward in a lot of issues. So, and if there's minimal overtime, then that more than pays, because we in the past have paid some outlandish overtime.
$22,000 in
Just in
January.
January.
Yeah. So I mean, my thought is with, the reduction in overtime, other than just unforeseen circumstances, it should come close to, almost paying for another officer, a full-time officer.
Now, Chief, the 12-hour shifts, how would that work? So would they work like 3 straight
Well,
12-hour days and then be off for 4?
Usually, it's 12 hours. And then
it's usually the schedule that I think is the most common schedule and the most beneficial is you work 2 days, you're off 2 days, you work 2 days, you're off 3 days, you work 3 days, you're off 2 days. And it's basically set on a 14-day schedule.
Gotcha.
So basically one pay period, an officer would work 7 days of that 14 days. So he would have 7 days off. We would have 4 shifts, 2 shifts. We would have basically 4 teams of 2, and they would be days and nights. We would still run our shifts. Our 12-hour shifts would be from 6A to 6P, being a day shift, if you will, and then a 6P to 6A, which would be a night shift. One of the issues that we have contractually right now, anything beyond 8 hours in a day is considered overtime for the officers. I'm working with a union representative right now because they're all in favor for it. So they're in support of it as well. So we can do, obviously, before anything would be enacted, I would want to make sure that we had an MOU with the union in place that, where they would waive that for 12-hour shifts. So that way there wouldn't be any additional overtime.
Okay.
nice.
Any thoughts on the part-time clerk? Else?
If the chief says that they can handle it and he's got the position open and it's actually going to be beneficial for his officers to be more patrol time, which is what we need. If he can man that, he's running that ship. I don't have a problem with it.
So I think we got to do a staffing ordinance, not correct, right? To change from a part-time officer to a
Yes.
part-time clerical?
We have to change it.
Yes.
I believe we had to
Well,
do
we're not
that.
changing the number of.
No, but it's still, it goes.
Changing the
from
staffing.
To clerical, and it's different, I think, union-wise as well.
Okay.
So that's fine, we can just put a.
So we would have, 9 full-time,
Make sure
2
Mr.
part-time,
Hunter-
and then 1 clerical.
Part-time.
Right.
Yeah, I verify with that with Gary because
Yeah.
I don't know if we actually need to do that. If he might have the authority to do that within, because he's not staffing more than what we've allowed him.
Right. But he might be
entitlement.
changing,
Maybe
he's
a
changing
union
it.
issue actually that
Yeah.
that's a need.
So it's a
That would be not necessarily a union position. It would actually probably would be a union position.
It is, it would be just like our,
Part-time
just like any of our other part-time employees, even down at the, they were not necessarily union per se, but they paid into OPERS, the lifeguards and such. So, I think this is a great move forward. It's been brought up in the past, and now, Chief, we're starting to get a lot of traction with it. If you have any questions on the schedule, you can Google Panama schedule. It's very common out there. It's the gravy shift for the military law enforcement.
Okay.
And I think all the changes are going to be in the best interest of the guys. More time off, more time home.
Yeah. Same thing happened in the fire department. And the guys love having the time off. So,
Yeah.
Chief, I had a question about how you figure you would have the hours for that individual.
On the clerk's position?
Yep.
Well, as much coverage as we could get for like 5 days. I mean, obviously it'd be nice to have somebody there 5 days through all of our work days. If that person worked 6.5 hours a day, I believe that would be 32.5 hours for a week. Well, wanting to stay under the part-time would want to stay under the 32 hours. Essentially, just like maybe like on Friday or one other day, come in an hour late, or that's really that extra hour there. Either way, can be cut at the beginning of the week or the end of the week. I really wouldn't have any preference, but it would be nice, like basically from 9 to 4 with a 30-minute lunch. So that would be 7 hours, 6.5 hours a day. So those are the hours, just standard business hours. That's when the majority of our influx of walk-ins come in. That and immediately after work, but that's when the filing needs to be done, things like that.
Perfect. Thank you.
I think that's awesome. All right, we'll check with Gary on that, and if we need to staff more on it, then we'll have him write one up and present to council. Second thing I've got is what to hire the chief permanent and take him off of an intern and move him up to the level 2 pay, which is the same as what Chris Johnson was getting at that point.
I don't have a problem with that.
What was our time frame that we gave him for interim anyway?
We didn't give time.
I don't think we did give him time for it.
We didn't do it. Have you done an evaluation of him?
It's nothing but positive. You look at the dollars and cents, you look at the performance and even the attitudes and the morale.
I was reading somewhere the other day that we have done more arrests in 6 weeks than we did in the prior 2 years for drugs.
We can't validate that number, but
I did. Well, I got to give kudos out to our police department. You guys have been through a lot, and
The perception is changing.
it's impressive what's going on. When you hear people in the alleys saying "stay off the streets, stay in the alleys," they're out today. It's kind of stuff I like to hear. So, thank you.
The guys are really responding well to everything. I mean, I know they have been through a lot, and it's always difficult to have new management come in. We all been through it before, different lines of work, but they really have responded well. They really have. The mixture of the new blood mixed with some of the veteran guys has went very well. It's been pretty seamless for the most part. We still have a long way to go, but we're definitely moving in the right direction. I feel very positive about that.
I would very much appreciate council's action to make Chief Fitch permanent as well. It just gets rid of that looming cloud, if you will, of what if down the road. And if you're willing to do that, I would very much appreciate that.
I'm good. I'd be good to send it to council.
Something I just thought about. Harry's done this before in some of his reports to council, but some things I think that are important. You started doing as far as employees and recognized employees of the month, et cetera. Harry's talked about some trainings that he's done with his guys. Chief's been talking about doing training with their officers, but I think it'd be actually a good thing to potentially look at recognizing those individuals that obtain certain certificates of training, more publicly. So maybe bring them into council or something just to recognize them, because I think it's important and validation for those officers, for those firefighters that are, they're working hard, they're and Harry's got more on his staff than we do in the police department, but, there's still a lot of people that probably don't even know all of the firemen and women. I don't know if we have any.
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea in the future, especially after this COVID thing hopefully starts changing a little bit. I hear a lot of people out in the community wanting to meet the chief, wanting to meet the new officers, wanting to know who these people are. And I think if we can put a face to the name, I think that will help people become more comfortable dealing. It's kind of a trust thing, once they know your name and they know you're kind of human and just not that position.
Well, we do have lectures coming soon for the police department. We're wrapped up. As soon as we get wrapped up over there, we're gonna have an open house with food and invite the public to meet the new chief, meet new officers. So,
Nice.
So I think to maybe expand on what you're talking about, Mr. Taylor, is actually Chief Fitch and I were just talking about this today. And we were trying to have an employee picnic this past Friday. However, it didn't work out for a multitude of reasons, mainly COVID. And so what we want to do, or what I want to do, no matter what, is have an annual either award ceremony, holiday party, you name it. I've seen it a couple different places where you do it in January instead of December, so you don't interfere with people's Christmas parties. But it's also a recognition banquet, luncheon, you name it. I know police department has a lot of individual PD awards. I believe on the civilian side, FD has a lot of individual awards. Plus, all the city employees are eligible for the Employee of the Month, which I like to hand out. And so at the end of the day, all of our hard workers, I want them all recognized, formally. And, if we can get to where, we do have a banquet of some sorts, of course, we can open however we want to do that. But I would like to have all of our folks recognized that have garnered awards for training certificates or, outstanding performance, you name it.
well, typically we do a community picnic, and that's something that we can incorporate into that and recognize them in front of the public at the community picnics. But I think this year we're not having one because of COVID. Yeah. So, but we've had it's very successful in the past 2 years, where we've honored different military members. But we can recognize police, fire, any of employees.
Absolutely. I think it's great just to, for the employee side of it, I don't want to take away anything from military folks that we're doing stuff for, or vice versa. Or if it does mesh together well, then so, whatever.
Yeah,
I just want to make sure our folks are, we have a lot of all-stars on our team, and I'm really happy to have them. We have a lot of folks that they're not here for the paycheck, and I want to make sure they know how much I appreciate them.
So typically we honor a veteran at the community picnic, but there's no reason why we couldn't honor a veteran and then incorporate in recognizing our city employees, officers, fire department, any of them that, award ceremony or whatever you want to call it. So we can, and it'd be nice to have all of them there anyhow, because the public will be there, officers will be there, fire's always there. So.
Great.
Okay. Everybody on board with bringing Chief up in front of council?
I'm fine with that.
Sure thing.
So be it. Let's see. And then last thing I got for the police department is the replacement for the wrecked cruiser. So I believe we got a price for that.
Yes, I checked around with multiple agencies. There is currently no 2020s available as far as like a police package with the Fords to stay consistent with keeping everything as a Ford. So I checked in some other makes and models, and one of the other more popular brands is the Chevy Silverado. Our good friend Justin Booth was kind enough to come in, actually was able to secure a bid of 33.4.
There you go.
With Mark Porter, and it's a black crew cab, 4-wheel drive, half-ton pickup truck, 1500. It's well equipped. I mean, it's nothing fancy, but it's well equipped, more than sufficient for what we would need at the police department. It also, we factored in between getting a radio in and the light systems that would be put in it, it would be, it would come in about under $5,000 initially. So for 38.4, 38.5, somewhere in there, you could be fully equipped and operational, everything we need on it.
And the reason for a truck is so you can haul things when you confiscate them?
Yeah, as you well know, we've been confiscating a lot of bicycles. We've got quite the collection. Also, we've been, occasionally we'll get a shopping cart here or there, although code enforcement pretty much beats us to the punch on those. However, when we do search warrants, we've been doing a lot of search warrants, or at least starting to do a lot of search warrants. And when we go there, if we get larger items or things of that nature, it's nice to have a truck. Because even though each guy has an SUV, and they're very nice vehicles, usually the minimum equipment that we carry in those, the backs are full.
We do search warrants?
We do now. Yes, sir. And there's been several times where it would have been nice to have a truck to haul evidence outside. Like we got one that was a marijuana grow, indoor marijuana grow. You can't put, it would have been nice to have a truck to. And actually, one of the officers ended up coming with a personal truck. So, yeah, there's multiple needs for a truck for those reasons. I think a truck would be best suited as opposed to another SUV or a car even. It would just be nice to have where all the officers had access to it and they could, utilize it in those circumstances.
That's a 4-door truck?
Yes, sir. It's a crew cab.
Crew cab.
It also, and for
So
whatever.
the outfitted just they'll be able to haul,
Criminals.
criminals as well.
Yes.
Suspects.
Suspects.
We don't need, I wasn't going to get a cage in it per se. So like a combative individual prisoner, no. We would have another
Just throw
one.
him in bed.
We could do that.
Tie downs.
Ratchet straps.
But everything else would be equipped the
Sorry.
same. It would have the same radio system. We're going to go a little cheaper on the light bar system. We don't necessarily need the entire light bar. Those are fairly pricey. So we could do the covert strobe lights. And I mean, it would still serve the purpose. It would meet all the specifications to perform a traffic stop if necessary, all those things. It wouldn't have a cage in it, but it would definitely be suited where you can still transport a prisoner.
Okay.
And Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, we're getting 15.5 from the insurance. That would leave a balance of 17.9.
Right. So I think it's fair to look holistically this whole year. So we've totaled 2 cruisers, and both of them, we've got roughly 15,000 put back into the general fund. There was never an intent to buy a chief's vehicle. The intent was always to use one of those 2 that are now totaled as the chief's vehicle. So, right. So now that 2 of them have been totaled, that's the only reason we're coming forward with the need now.
So, but you got insurance money for both of them then?
We did roughly $15,000 for both.
Oh,
Each, sorry, 15,000
So
each, so
about
roughly 30,000.
So we're at roughly 30,000 then, so that's not as much.
That's not a big of a pill to swallow.
Also, then we only need about $8,000.
Yeah.
85 to 9, yeah.
So I'm okay with sending that to finance. Right, boss?
I love it. Here it comes.
She's good with that.
Smiley face.
Yeah, I you know what, I'm all for getting what we need, and I can see having a bicycle on the roof rack or on the light bar, bringing it back is probably not a real good idea. And I do see a lot of that going on now. So
Can you
Now you have the option to put out
we need to have a snowplow attachment in front of it.
Yeah, it does have to have a snowplow attachment. Can the 2 Scotts, can you guys work with Taylor to figure out where we would find the other 8?
Is the truck red or is it?
It's black.
It's black.
It's black.
So all in all, I think
Shermanator, that one will definitely be called Shermanator on the front.
Right?
So if you can work with Taylor to figure out where we would, where the best place to hold those funds. Now, another question is potentially, is that other $8,000 to $9,000, is that potential money that can be used for the COVID, under the COVID?
no one's figured out a way to justify that yet.
Okay.
I've asked that question.
Okay.
And, the other option too, if you would wish, we can do the same option that Chief Barber did with his truck as far as leasing it, so we wouldn't have to pony up the full amount now, which might be wiser for the city in the long run, where you do a down payment roughly, just say 15,000, and your payment, is what, 4 years after that or 5 years roughly, Harry?
Usually they're at least companies in the city. Has been 3 years, and when it comes to pickup truck, I've drug out another year to paying it down. But that's also a capital improvement.
So, I mean, I'm okay with that as long as we take the funds that we already have
Allocate.
earmarked for that and set it aside,
That's fine. I just wanted to bring that option to the table, instead of paying outright for it.
So what if we put the whole 30 down? Because that's earmarked for replacement cruiser, and then just finance the 8 for 3 years.
Whatever floats your boat. We can do that. Even if you did it 2 years.
Just pay the.
Let's take it to finance and just see where we're at
We'll
with that.
figure it out. Otherwise, I'm just thinking pay it off in next year. It'll be on a different budget.
Okay. Before finance, I can.
I'm all
check
for
this
that, taking
option.
it to finance and seeing where we get that from and figuring it
I
out
think our
if we can.
finance, chair is done with financing long-term debt.
Right. So about $8
The
grand.
less payments though that we have,
Mhm.
we have quite a few right now.
Mhm.
So, if we have the money and it's in there from the 2 wreck cruisers and we only got to come up with 8,
Yeah, you pull that out of capital.
that's not real bad of a payment, period. Or, do we pay it all off? I get it, but at the same time, it is definitely a need, I believe. I don't believe it's a want. I believe it's actually a need. So
I think if we pay it off, we don't pay it off, then, we'll just maybe apply a little pressure to the police department to, offset some expenses there, so. Can't say revenue, that's a bad word.
So in the new budget, though, we could probably budget the 8,000 for the new year, put 30 down, finance it, and then just pay it off with the new budget.
I can see the reflection.
So,
Mhm.
Cool. Is that all you have for the police department?
Yes, that's all I have.
Okay, I have one that maybe the chief can help us with, but I guess we received a phone message that was forwarded to us from a citizen, actually, of Bookville. I don't think they're a citizen of Nelsonville, but I don't think they're a resident of Nelsonville. I think they're a resident of,
Is that your second cousin?
relation of Tony's, asking that Nelsonville not do no-knock warrants. Can you explain this to us, what a no-knock warrant would be? And
Well, a no-knock warrant versus, there's 2 search warrants. If you're searching a premises or property, there's a knock and announce and a no-knock. A knock and announce, for example, is where officers announce, police department, knock on the door, announce, knock on the door, announce. And then roughly as a general rule, 30 seconds of yelling and saying, we're going to come in. And if that doesn't happen, then essentially we breach the door and then we go on into the residence. A no-knock search warrant is where you don't have any legal requirement to announce. And you essentially stack up on a door and you just breach the door immediately without any notification. There's a special guidelines. We certainly haven't done any no-knock search warrants since I've been here. There's special guidelines because obviously a no-knock search warrant is even more intrusive than a standard knock and announce search warrant. No-knock search warrants has a special speculations of the law where you have to even go before a judge on a recording. You have to show imminent danger to the officers and likely destruction of evidence to where you have to get in there before evidence could be, I've been on a number of no-knock search warrants in my career, but we've certainly not done any of those here at Nelsonville since I've been here in 7 weeks.
Thank you, Chief. That's good to know.
Yeah, I don't even know why
Know
they
the difference.
brought it up, but
So I'm not certain if they think we're going to do them or we've already done them. I'm not sure what the caller.
I don't think we've ever done it.
Yeah, I would say probably not. Maybe sometimes if it's a a situation where there's imminent death or danger, or if a person's saying that he's going to shoot or something like that, there's no knock specifications. but they are critiqued a lot more with a lot more scrutiny. Not necessarily you have to have the same level of probable cause to obtain the warrant, but then you have to go above and beyond the probable cause to search the residence as to why you need a no-knock search warrant versus a knock and announce. And I would say just roughly 98 to 99% of search warrants done in the state of Ohio are knock and announce, not no knocks.
Yeah, I don't even think we did those.
So, but all the search warrants we've done since I've been here, I've been present on, and they were all knock and announce.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. Thanks for that explanation. All right.
I got one thing for the fire department, unless Gary wants to add to it, and that is also their staffing. So eventually we want to get to an EMS situation, and it would be a total of 6 full-time firefighters. We're not asking for 6. Right now they got 3. So I'd like to see and start this conversation that January 1, the new staffing ordinance would allow him a 4th full-time firefighter to help the EMS program. And the reason for that is to start getting these things involved. Apparently we've been paying ghost employees over at the fire department, so we should surely be able to
The
afford.
hell you say?
I kid you not.
I know. Okay.
So,
On-
I would say we should be able to at least afford.
Ongoing investigation.
Yeah,
Just saying.
allegedly.
Yes. There you go. There it is. Thank you.
Didn't I say that first? Yeah, I just wanted to start that conversation.
So, well, let's start it here since Chief's here. So if, so the 4th fire, can you say fireman still, is that a gender neutral
Fighter.
firefighter? Okay. So the 4th full-time though, would they still be considered a firefighter, or would this position be considered an EMS position? Because are they going to be classified differently when it comes to their role?
No.
Okay.
Right now, the way we operate under my group license, we do fire and EMS both now, but we're not doing any type of transport.
Okay.
I've had push from my crew in its entirety and most of council now to push towards more of an EMS
Transport.
stance in the city of Nelsonville and the surrounding area. So the only way to do that is to start improving the staffing that we have, not improving the members, but improving the buy-in to the department and have some stable employees on our roster. We do good now with what we have. However, to cover our shifts the way we do, to keep the cost down, to keep eliminating overtime the way we have been, the only way to do that is staff the way we're staffing right now. And if we staff for EMS, we would have to have a crew dedicated to that. So the goal, the idea, the thinking behind this was, it hasn't really came up a whole lot in conversation yet. But the thinking was, once a year, add a full-time firefighter until we get down the road 2 or 3 years. We start running EMS more as far as more of a transport role. We start bringing money in. That way, this position, these services that we provide in our community can start to pay for themselves. With an aging community, that's definitely the direction that the age group in the community has been pushing us anyway. If you would have asked me 5 years ago if we would be doing EMS right now, I would say there's no way. Matter of fact, most of my department are paramedics and EMTs now, and currently we have 4 or 5 members going through EMT training right now through the end of October. These are all steps to take to get to the position of performing more of an EMS service in cities. There are quite a few steps that we have to jump through to get there, but we absolutely cannot do that with the staffing we have now. You know, like I said, we're covering shifts, but you realize that every part-time firefighter that I have on my staff goes from this firehouse to another firehouse. They're jumping from shift to shift. And as soon as a full-time job opens up, then they jump to that full-time job. I have some firefighters that are working 5 different fire departments and EMS stations. So they are literally going from shift to shift. It's great. It's great for us that we have all these members here, but we also have to get some buy-in as well. To make this work, to keep our staffing levels down, we have to have buy-in. We have to be able to count on these firefighters off duty as well. And to do that requires buy-in, and it's really hard to get buy-in with part-time service.
I think the idea was, so you would have one full-timer, so you'd have 2 full-times per shift. And right now you have 1 full-time per shift and 1 part-time going in. So basically you have a full-timer on the squad and a full-timer on the engine, and then they would be paired up with part-timers to fill it.
That's the
So you basically, instead of having 2 on shift, it'd be 3 on shift, 2 full and a part-time.
Well, there'd be 2 part-time.
2
Two
part-time.
part-time, yeah. Essentially, what would happen is, once we had this EMS service going, we would have a crew that just staffs the squad, and then a crew that staffs the ambulance. That way, what happens is, we're doing patient care now, we can't stop legally, we can't stop patient care to go take care of a structure fire. So we have to be very careful, and it's always a strategy. We always have to strategize every time we go out on an EMS call. And even a majority of the EMS calls we have now, our staff end up driving Athens County EMS squad out of town to the hospital.
But say we were in that situation, you had 2 full-time EMS and 2 full-time firefighters, and they respond to the same incident to help out. If a structure fire were to occur at that point, the 2 full-time firefighters at that point could break away and go, and the 2 EMS would be a little.
That's why, to answer the previous question, everybody's cross-trained. So I would never bring somebody in just as on the EMS side.
Right. But whoever's designated that shift or that side will have to stay.
So what happens is if we have a structure fire and there's no EMS call, we just have more help on the structure fire.
Right.
Which helps us out anyway, since we're a combination.
And kind of vice versa.
Yeah, we staff right now with part-time and full-time firefighters, and we try to supplement on the volunteer side of it, because we still have the volunteer side of the department. And as everybody knows, volunteerism is just not what it used to be, and it continues to decline. It's harder to get good candidates that want to volunteer their time, and those people don't have the time to volunteer.
Well, and once you start transporting, with EMS, you can also, we start collecting money from the insurance
Well,
companies.
I know an easy way, the easiest thing I could say to you is every time somebody calls 911 now, that money leaves the city. We should probably change that. I've had a lot of push from the community members, and a lot of push even from other city employees, including council members, to push towards doing a BLS transport and then transitioning that into ALS transport. There are hoops to jump through. The drug license I have now in my name for the city of Nelsonville does not cover us doing transport. That is going to be another step, medical direction, operational directive changes. That part's not hard. We can shop around and get some of these things taken care of. As Scott knows, my office is a big whiteboard on one wall. We're constantly taking notes and trying to take steps to get to that position. But it will take some time. It will not happen overnight. It will take some money to get us there. And it's not going to just automatically pay for itself when we start. It's going to take some time.
So the next step is potentially to add a full-time position beginning next year then?
If I could,
The fourth firefighter. Yeah.
right, if I could just jump in and throw in a little, we know what the end game is. The end game is us transporting. Lots of good reasons for that. Go to Logan, go to Lancaster, not, you have options. So we're in the process of engineering a timeline, if you will, of mile markers, and then also off ramps too. Because if it becomes a point where we just find that it's not feasible anymore, we want to have that option to exit. However, that's just a backup plan. So by adding this next firefighter to the roster, what that does is enable us to expand services a little bit to get to that next level. So it's just slow growth is ultimately what that's going to provide for the city. And hopefully by the end of the year, we have our timeline laid out that we can present to you folks, maybe something like a Gantt chart or something of that. So we can show you the mile markers where we want to go in the next 3 years, 4 years, whatever we whatever the team comes up with, you know, we got to hit this mile marker by this date, you know, so we have goals that we're reaching for and going out. Because there's a whole lot that we're not talking about right here in this forum right now that's required. There's a lot of big hurdles. This is just the first hurdle, if you will, just to get to the next level to start expanding in that phase as well.
Perfect. Appreciate that.
Yeah, and this was just a conversation starter on the 4th firefighter and the 10th police officer for next year's budget.
Sounds good.
Okay. Ms. Barber's here now. If anybody has any questions on the IPMC, and by the way, you have less than 15 minutes.
Yeah, we don't have 39 minutes.
Yeah, you actually have like 13 and a half.
So would you like to explain the IPMC? Let's see up the acronym.
You'll have to come up to a mic.
International Property Maintenance Code.
You can't be seen. While she's come up to the mic, you know, another request that fire had, and actually police has it as well, and it's also very applicable to Ms. Barber, is we need to get the service test set up post haste. Police, fire, across the board.
Yeah.
So
Who's in charge of that?
Ms. Barber she's the secretary for that now that we have our members in there. So I don't know if we need council action or if it's just to notify council that that's what we're going to do. And we need to get those scheduled very quickly and move out on that.
Yeah, Civil Service Committee, I think is.
Okay, before we let her start, did you have anything else? Because you know, I can't stop her once she starts.
No, I believe that.
We never asked Scott that either, so we should ask both of them.
The dates proposed.
Yes.
So the fire department exam must be scheduled by the end of October, and the test cannot be later than December.
What happens when you hire provisionally? That those provisional appointments for the last 6 months. I definitely made it a point as chief to not allow that time frame to lapse. We're going to do civil service, we need to do it right, make sure everybody does it correctly. That's why the time frames are where they are.
Okay.
Did you have anything else, Chief Finch?
Anything else?
No, sir.
Nothing else?
No, sir.
Are you sure?
I'm positive.
It's all you.
You have 12 minutes now.
I would just like to
11 minutes
say
and 30 seconds.
that I would like to welcome any of the council members to go on any of the voluntary inspections that I'm doing.
It'll have to be a Wednesday, and it can't be this Wednesday for me. Actually, I have a dentist appointment next Wednesday, so it can't be next Wednesday.
I'm getting
It's the
an,
only day off I got.
I'm getting an influx of individuals that are calling in requesting rental inspections. And it's a surprise to me because over the last 2 years, we've had a lot of people that had fear in the community that if they did get a rental inspection, if they did call me, guess what would happen?
They get evicted.
Yeah,
So these
they would get
are
evicted.
folks about their own unit.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, this is- yeah. See, we did have that problem before, and I just remember it getting shut down.
Yeah.
Referendum.
Right. So I think in order to get the housing crisis that we have in the city under control, the first thing we need to do is instead of having Title 37, which is very generic, and that's our current rental code, and only by complaint basis, individual has to fill out a statement, and then I schedule time to go in and do an inspection, but that we adopt the International Property Code standards, which is the basic standards of living for individuals. We adopt that first and use that as our guide to do rental inspections on a complaint basis. And then in the future, if we want to look into doing further investigation into the rental properties, and I hate to just pick on the rental properties, but to be honest, we have a problem with that right now with several areas in our community. And I've been getting, like I said, a huge increase in complaints. And I would love for you guys to come along as long as the client or the tenant says it's okay. We always ask them. If Dan goes, I said, this is Dan, he's a council member. Are you okay with him coming in? And they're just happy that someone's paying attention to them.
I appreciate the offer. Wednesdays is my only day off, and I've got a side job on this Wednesday. I got a dentist appointment next week, but I've actually been in several of these units that you're probably, well, similar to probably what you're referring to. And I know, I actually helped another landlord the other night board up. They took back possession of a property, and yeah, I saw all the roaches and stuff like that. I'm well aware of what some of the, living conditions are like. Yeah, so it's definitely a problem.
I think for most folks, education is a huge tool. Just going into the house and educating both parties, the tenant and the landlord, on the expectations. I think that's helped me a lot, is just talking to both of them. And I do that. I send them a copy of the landlord, the property owner, a copy of my inspection. And I also sent them a copy of Title 37 to let them know what we expect them. I think the biggest issue would be individuals having exposed wiring. We see that. We also see, fire extinguishers that are out of date. We see a lot of smoke detectors that don't have batteries, that aren't working properly. We've seen individuals not having access to the thermostat. So there's a thermostat in the center of the building and they don't have access to it, and there's not a thermostat in their room. We see a lot of floors falling through, kitchen, bathroom floors. And I think some of the landlords may, when I contact them, don't even know that the properties are in that condition because they've never been in their units for 5 or 6 years. So it's not necessarily the landlord that's creating that issue. It's the clientele that they're putting into their buildings. So I don't think it's one person's fault versus another person. I think it's across the board, multiple issues. We find a lot of folks that have a lot of mental health issues, don't know that they can get the sticky traps. They could talk to their landlord about the bugs in their house so that they can actually get rid of them. Instead, we go to a triplex and there's probably close to 200,000 cockroaches in the 3 units. And the individuals are always happy to tell me how much they're paying a month in rent. And so I did an inspection on a triplex that maybe should have been condemned. And I'm working with the property owner now to get it up to basic safety limits and standards. And he was getting right around $1,900 a month out of the triplex. And the house was in terrible condition. It's really a sad situation. He had an individual that was homeless, and she was just happy to have a home. He had a couple people downstairs that had some mental health issues, didn't know how to clean their house, really didn't take out trash for over a year maybe. So all their household trash was stacked up throughout the building. And then we had the other unit where they were just mad at the landlord, so they were wanting to get back at him. But I mean, it's just situations like that I think we as officials should take care of our citizens and make sure that they're living in a safe, healthy, respectful environment. And I think part of that is adopting that code because it has several standards. And if anyone, I don't have a recent copy. Harry's got a copy I can borrow off him and let you guys borrow. I would like to order the recent one. I think it's 2018 is the most recent. I do know that a couple years ago, my predecessor tried to get council to adopt. And I think the fire department was also on board with that. And I can let Harry speak of that if he wants to.
The International Property Maintenance Code is already vetted by animal attorneys for the International Code Council as well. And the State of Ohio, the State Fire Marshal's Office also enforces the International Property Maintenance Code. Their basic life safety standards, basic health department standards. It even coincides with the basic standards from the Athens County Health Department as far as living arrangements. It's basic safety standards. And again, we're talking about rentals, not an individual's home, you know, 1 or 2 family dwellings. That's important to get that out there too, because there's been a lot of misrepresentation of even the fire code. Yes, the fire code can be enforced on somebody's personal home, but we don't do that, and the state doesn't do that as well. International Property Maintenance Code, myself and Steve tried to push that. Yes, you're right, Corey, you do remember when that happened, and we also know why it died, and it wasn't anybody's fault in this room. But, I mean, it's basic standards. I've done inspections in homes where a landlord will put somebody in a basement, a windowless basement. Well, from a firefighting standpoint, that is probably the most dangerous atmosphere that tenant can be in. It's the most dangerous atmosphere we can be in the event of a fire. You cannot get out. It's basic means of egress. It's basic life safety standards. The book is not that big. It's not, I think if council and the police and fire committee looked at the book and the publication, they would be more than happy with what's in the publication. And again, it's already been vetted by the panel attorneys in the state of Ohio as well.
I think it also is important to, so everybody is, you know, fully aware that this is no way a means to try to pick on any landlords or, you know, anyone within the community that is even a rentor. You know, I think that's important. I think that was also an issue that, you know, was trying to be stirred up, and it's not. It's just, it's about bringing the standards in the city, you know, up. And I think I know some people in this community that are very good people, very, very good people, and work hard every day, and but they're struggling still, and they're renting, and they deserve better, you know. The landlord should step up. So it's not, we're not picking on anybody. We're not trying to call anybody out. We're trying to be fair. We're all subject to it that have property. So I think that's important to express that. So.
Well, and I think it gives them another tool that, you know, it's a vicious cycle. So they can't really afford to move out, yet they can't keep living in what they're living in. So, because we have no way of helping them until we adopt something like this. Wrap it up, Barbara. Got 2 minutes.
Question.
Okay, sorry, if you were done.
Go ahead.
This question is to the police department from Facebook. So a citizen asked a question, and I think it's a good question for everybody in the town to know, so they understand the importance of, you know, mutual aid and partnerships, and how important it is for us as a city to work with other agencies around. So here's what the question is. If the police department is okay on staffing, why are officers working by themselves? And when that officer has to leave town, our city goes without police protection until they get back? ? So I can answer that, but I'd rather hand that over to the chief.
Well, first of all, I think the person, whoever wrote that, is a little confused, because if where staffing is not okay, if there was staffing was okay, I wouldn't have asked for an additional officer. So that being said, that's a little confusing. I don't know where that person got that information. Secondly, if there's no officer permitted to leave town, if they're the only officer working, there has been a few cases here of late where staffing called for one officer to work by himself occasionally. And that's just due to the fact that we got 3 officers that's currently in training. The 3 new guys are in training. So they're either 2-man units or they're with another officer being directed and monitored by that, you know, their FTO, their field training officer. So I don't know. That's just inaccurate information. Somebody misinformed.
Yeah, sounds like it.
Thanks, chief.
You're welcome.
One last, and it's probably not the best time with 1 minute left, but Knox box enforcement. So have we, and maybe I'm missing something, but have we just, did we decide at the last time we talked about just to remove the city ordinance and then just go with the state fire marshal or the state fire code? Or do we want to leave it as is? So just to refresh everybody's memory, the confusion came in with this city ordinance because it kind of jumbled up the verbiage and it really took away from what the state fire marshal's office or the state fire code is. And being that we've adopted, the state fire code in the city, it's pretty cut and dry in there, very black and white, if you will. So I just wanted to bring that up again.
Yeah, refresher real quick. Does it state what we're following? It's a mandatory thing?
So the fire code is a mandatory code. Or it is a mandatory thing with the state fire code, where the verbiage confuses people and it muddies up the water is our ordinance. So if we just took our ordinance away and just went with what the state says, then there would be no muddy waters.
I think probably removing ours is probably the
Yeah, that was my recommendation.
easiest thing to do, yeah.
Okay.
So we'll get with Gary and find out how to do that, just to repeal it.
All right. Everybody good?
I'm good with that.
All right, I'll check with Gary.
All right.
We'll call this meeting to end because Ms. Barber went over at 7:03.